everyone. Welcome back to Field Advisor, the first podcast of the 2026 season. Here we are going into mid-February, and joining me today is Kevin Johnson, aka KJ. He's the Director of Government Relations and Strategy with Illinois Soybean Association. KJ, I'm going to drive right into the latest news. Last Friday was about Dicamba, and the news release from the EPA. This is how it reads. EPA implements strongest protections in agency history for over-the-top dicamba use on cotton and soybeans for the next two growing seasons. So tell us what was in that release and how you interpreted it.
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me on first, Kelsey. Look forward to talking to our members and just soybean farmers across the state on a lot of issues. But this is definitely, we had heard this for a while. If you remember, I think right back during the Farm Progress Show last year, US EPA did say they were going to put out for comment should they use dicamba for the 26 growing season. Had meetings with my previous job. I just started with ISA in the beginning of January, but talking with the EPA, what that looks like. And they always had said that it's coming, something is coming. And finally did get released about 5 o'clock on Friday. You know how those media drops happen.
Great timing. Yeah.
Absolutely. You can pretty much tell on a Friday at 5 till 5 Eastern Central Time, something's probably going to get released. And this was kind of one of those from there. But what the new dicamba label says is kind of pretty much what they had put out last summer, that they are going to put out for over-the-top use for cotton and soybeans. They do have an 95-degree high. They do not have a temperature or a cutoff date per se. Now, we'll kind of talk about what Illinois Department of Ag might do. But right now, what we see is that the label as it speaks right now for the three formalizations is a 95 Fahrenheit degree cutoff, no cutoff date. There is some buffers from there, and it's about a half pound of actual active ingredient that you can use going into the future on soybeans and cotton.
So I want to underscore something that I've been reading in the news. I saw from Illinois Fertilizer and Chemical Association, they said it's the most restrictive label requirements in the agency's history. The EPA said in their own headline, strongest protections in agency history. So this is not something to be taken lightly.
No, I don't think so. I think that is correct. They've never had never had anything to do with forecasted highs or anything like that. Now, in Illinois, with the state of Illinois Department of Ag, they have put out there, and again, we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes, but this is the first time you've ever seen more of a buffer, or they actually put a restriction on how much actually active ingredient you can use going forward. So again, I would agree with them that this is the most restrictive that US EPA has been on dicamba for over the top use.
And they say that's based on farmer input, scientific review, and legal scrutiny. Would you see it the same way?
Yeah, I would say that. I think they're definitely hearing from farmers. I know EPA was definitely, when they got the comments from farmers, there was a lot of not just copy and paste responses. There was a lot of what they talk about, unique comments. And again, there's a lot of farmers that said, we want to use, but we also know there probably should be restrictions. Again, it's furthest they've ever went on dicamba since we started using dicamba over the top in 17. Dicamba goes back many years out there, but for over the top use, it started in 17, and then we'll go from there.
So let's talk about Illinois State specifically. So you have the federal guidance, and then are we waiting on state guidance? Bigger picture, how does that all work? Lay that out for us.
So what happens is the federal is the base label. The state cannot do anything less than the base label. So if say the state of Illinois wanted to go to 100 degrees, they can't. Federal label is the base label. Now, the state can do more restrictions than the federal label, and that's what you'll probably see. Currently, right now, we have not heard from the Department of Ag officially, but we have been talking with them off to the side. In current rules, not statute, current rules, there is on dicamba a forecasted high of 85 degrees and a June 20th cutoff date. Our perception here at ISA is that the Department of Ag will come back with those same restrictions. They have not yet, but I think that will come in the coming days. So what that means is if you load your sprayer and it is 78 degrees at 10 a.m. in the morning, but the forecasted high by the National Weather Service is supposed to be 85 or 86, that is a do not spray that day. Okay, so it is a do not spray. In the past, there has been a June 12th cutoff date, but what is currently in rules is June 20th, and we think that the department will go back to that same date, just because to go through rules, it's 6 to 9 months to do that. And I think the department has true understandings that if they want to do something more restrictive or less restrictive, it would take 6 to 9 months, and we'd already be in the growing season. So we think that there will be some additional extras to the Dicamba label from the Illinois Department of Ag. Again, that's only on soybeans, but I would say that will come out in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Also, mandatory conservation practices. What does that all entail? And this is guidance from the federal side.
Yeah, that is still yet to be determined what those conservation practices. They put that in there. We're still waiting on a lot of details. I will say with this administration, they do great putting out a press release or something on True Social, but a lot of details might be lacking. And I think that's the question we're getting from a lot of people is what does that mean right now? That's still yet to be determined. But as soon as we have those details, we will get that out to our growers.
Okay. Quickly, I've read some articles about how companies reacting. It looks like BASF has confirmed a federal approval of Ingenia herbicide, if I've pronounced that correctly. Have you heard any more company reaction to this from that side?
Not since Friday, but all the big three, Bayer, BASF, everybody else has been supportive of some kind of label. Now, did they thought there was going to be more restrictions? Absolutely. I think there was a lot of conversations with EPA this last summer about even getting approval. Because you guys remember, we did not have dicamba for over-the-top use last year. So this is coming back. So there's been many conversations. What I've gotten from most of the chemical companies is they just wanted to see some kind of over-the-top label, even if there was more restrictions, but at least have that option for guys to use at over-the-top. And again, what I am seeing is a lot more guys using it as a burn-down type product, and then maybe use it as a over-the-top. But I will definitely think with how some of the traits are stacked up with dicamba, plus where you could use a Liberty, a lot more guys are using Liberty on the back end. But I think there's still got a lot of guys using dicamba as a pre. But this gives options to still use that, not super late in the season, but still has a thing to get a clean field. One of those plants are still small.
KJ, looking at this from the practical side, we're sitting here in February and this decision's come out. I know people wanted it sooner, but how will this affect farmers in 2026? Are they going to get in the fields and be using this, or is it too late? What's your perspective?
I think guys will still be able to use it. I can tell you on our own farm, we've already kind of laid out a plan, even though we're in the first week or second week of February. Usually that is kind of already set. You kind of got a game plan when you start prepaying for a lot of products, either that last couple weeks of December or the first 2 weeks of January. I think there will be a little switch because I think people thought that there could very well be a dicamba label. Now, what that dicamba label looked like, I don't think we may have had an idea. So I think there are game plans being put forth. I do think that most guys will use this product as a pre rather than a post, but there definitely will be using guys for a post product. If you've got super high weed pressure, I think guys will use it.
2-season test run. Any comment on that? So they say it's just for 2 years. See how it goes, and we'll see if what comes out on the other side. But any questioning on that, or do you think it's
no? One good thing I think is just we're giving guys certainty long term. I think as business people, we just want certainty. Tell us what the rules are, and we can plan for it. I would tell you this: I don't see this restriction being any less. Like if we go into 27, that hey, we're going to go to 100 degrees. No, I don't think so. If there is anything, it would be a tighter. Just to see how this label looks, If there was any problems with it, you could see that tightening. I don't see this label getting any looser from there. But I think it gives guys just more certainty of what products they can use long term.
And another question, this is calling for additional documentation too. And there's a lot to this and a lot to read into this. And like you said, there's still more questions, more details need to be laid out. But reading what they have to look on, I think it's the EPA bulletins live too, documenting all that is such an undertaking as well.
Yeah. So 2 things on that. I think farmers will get to know the Bulletins Live 2 website a lot more. You need to look at that because especially in the Endangered Species Act, this does apply to the Endangered Species Act. So what we've asked EPA even last fall is that Bulletins Live 2 is a good website, but it's, I say clunky, but just there's a lot of information. It's not real easy to just find one thing and just find where you need. Help streamline that. So we have definitely talked to EPA about that. But I will just tell you one thing. The federal label is asking for more record keeping, but here the last 5 years on Dicamba, the Department of Ag has asked for the 22 questions. There's a record keeping sheet you go do through Dicamba. There's 22 questions. I will tell you, if you ever get called in on a complaint, the Department of Ag, the first thing they're going to ask you for is your record keeping. I will tell you, if you do not have all 22 questions filled out, you are going to get a $750 fine. There's no questions asked. I as much as I can try and get you around different stuff, that will be a fine that is in. Farmers and retailers, if I can stress anything in this call, do your record keeping. And I know we get in busy season, hey, I'll take care of that later. Do that now. Do that in the cab. It takes 2-3 minutes. And I know 2 or 3 minutes in the heat of the session, we got to go. But that is going to help you long term. And I think that is not just on all chemicals. We're supposed to keep our keepings on a lot of it. But on Dicamba, this is mandatory. No questions asked. So do the record keeping. You can go to IFCA's training Dicamba website. There's some of the record keeping sheets on there. I know the Department of Ag will print a few of those out. Put them in your sprayer if you do use it. And especially use Dicamba. Use those sheets and answer those questions. Some of those questions you can fill out before you get into the season. There's probably half the questions you're going to have to fill out that day. What's the wind speed? What's the wind direction? Stuff like that. But again, I cannot stress enough. Do your record keep on Dicamba because, again, if some ever get called in, that's the first thing the Department of Ag is going to ask for.
And if you work with a custom company, your retailer, whatever it might be, this is something to have a conversation on as well to make sure that that communication of record keeping is being done as well.
Absolutely. Now, I will just tell you, if you have it custom applied by somebody else or a retailer, all the responsibility on that record keeping is on whoever is in the cab of that sprayer. So now you can ask for that information just for your documentation. But if there was an incident where it was a custom applicator did, that would be looked at by Department of Ag to them, not you. But again, good conversation we have with a retailer just about what we're using. And again, background information and just documentation for everything.
KJ, anything else on Dicamba that you want to share? I know you said more details to come, and we'll follow up there.
Definitely more details come. This is not the last thing you're going to hear about Dicamba in the 26th season. I just think have a game plan going into 26. Like, we used to, and I can even say it on our own farm, we kind of had a game plan, but then you had option B, C, and D. I think with the newer technologies and just how much record keeping and everything you do, have a game plan going in, try and stick with that game plan. And then if you got to throw if there's a curveball with weather, stuff like that, we can change. But, the last time you should think about what am I going to put on is a couple days beforehand or the day of what we're going to spray. Have an idea long-term of what we're using these products. Most farmers are saying, I'm using 100% this technology on it. There are some, I can even say on our own farm, hey, we're going to use this technology here or this technology here, but have a game plan going forward in 26 when it comes up.
Okay, KJ, we'll stick on the federal side. I've got to ask Farm Bill. I know some people cringe probably when they hear Farm Bill. They'll say, what Farm Bill? What's going on there? Can you give us an update?
So yes, Will. So as many of you guys know, last year, whatever you want to call it, the big beautiful bill had a lot of the big ticket items, crop insurance, the commodity title, SNAP stuff was in there. Now they are talking. There's a lot more titles in the Farm Bill than just that. Now that's a lot. That's a big lion's share of the money is those programs, but a lot of programs still got to be implemented. And what they're talking about is you can either call a skinny Farm Bill or Farm Bill 2.0. The chairman of the House Ag Committee, G.T. Thompson out of Pennsylvania, has said that the week of the 23rd, I think the week that we'll be down at Commodity Classic, that they are talking about marking up that Farm Bill. Me and one of the other team members at ISA will be going out to D.C. this week to just talk to members of Congress what that looks like. Again, it might not be the big sexy topics that we usually like to talk about on the Farm Bill, but there's a lot of other little things that will be talked about. Two things. Prop 12, that means about gestation crates for hog. That's a big issue.
California.
Out in California. That will be a big one. The other one is the Uniform Labeling Act on pesticides. This goes back to my old territory with the former job I had. This means, and I don't think farmers really understand it, because I usually ask this question to a group. Do you know what pesticide preemption means? And when I ask, raise your hand, do you know what that means? Most people do not. And this goes right back to the Uniform Labeling Act that will be in the Farm Bill, or at least there's talk about in this version of the Farm Bill. What that means is that the US EPA and the Illinois Department of Ag here in the state of Illinois regulate all pesticides, meaning McLean County can't put a ban on Roundup, or Urbana Township in Urbana, Illinois can't ban Dicamba. That is super important that we know from a farmer all the way up in Joe Daisy County to Cairo, Illinois, have the same restrictions, same label on what those pesticides look like. If we did not have pesticide preemption, you could have wide swings of what those labels look like. So those are one of the things that we'll be talking to legislators about, is that bill. Now, again, Illinois has that. 44 states do have pesticide preemption already. But I'll tell you one state that does not, and that's Hawaii. I will tell you every seed company has some kind of research farm in Hawaii, just because we're trying to get those seeds to market, research and stuff like that. So again, we would love to see every state have pesticide preemption, and that's the Uniform Labeling Act. So there's a lot of things that, again, aren't the big hot topics that everyone want to talk about, but there's a lot of importance that we're trying to get through this skinny Farm Bill 2.0, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll be keeping tabs on that. Let's go to Springfield. One of the things we talked about before we hit the record button is sometimes there's a lot of things going on in Springfield. Sometimes hard to keep track, but we don't always talk about it. So what do you think is the most important issue that's coming out of Springfield impacting Illinois soybean farmers?
Absolutely. And as we talked offline, we always talk about how important DC is. Everybody wants to talk about DC, what's on the national news, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in Springfield or your local county boards that have almost more direct impact on you than what some of the national stuff happens. So we just got through, last Friday was a deadline for bills to be introduced in Springfield for the spring session. And what that means is spring session down in Springfield lasts from pretty much January 1 to May 31st. Now we got some stuff that goes on the back end like veto session and lame duck. But the lion's share of the work down in Springfield happens in the spring. We are watching all the bills that got introduced. We are watching. Illinois Soybean Association did put in a B20 bill, meaning that we would like to see all local governments plus the state go to a B20 blend on all their diesel fleets. We will be pushing that. There's a lot of stuff talking about estate taxes. I think there's like 5 or 6, 7 different bills. We even have a bill talking about estate tax. Does that something move? We're going to look at that. What moves? I don't know. It might be later in the year, but there's going to be definitely talk about estate taxes. The other thing is talking about the LCS. That's all your renewable fuels. What does that look like? California does have some stuff on renewable fuels. What does that look like here in Illinois, and how can biodiesel be expanded if something looks like that? But the big thing that I think is just, as I told legislators, is just with the economics at the farm gate right now, don't pass bad legislation. We're not asking for a bunch of new legislation to be passed, but just don't pass bad legislation that's out there that will even put us behind even more as Illinois farmers or Illinois soybean growers. There's a lot of stuff on pesticides. You've got some bans out there. I can tell you 3 bans right now. The 3 bans that we have seen so far are a paraquat ban. That was new this year. We had never seen that. But there's also a 2,4-D ester ban that was introduced last year. We're going to see that again. And there's a Roundup ban. Now, do those 3 pass? I don't know. I think you could see it come through committee. My thought is that if you see any ban on product, that's not based off science. I think our talking has always been is that should be done at US EPA or the Illinois Department of Ag, especially US EPA, because that's based on science, not just of a whim of a legislator saying we should ban a product. So we're watching that one. There's a ban on all seed treatments, and it talks neonics, but that's all seed treatments. And as you know, probably 96% of all corn is treated with something. And the vast majority of soybeans, I'd probably say, my guess is between 70 to 80% of all soybeans that are planted have some kind of treatment, most with a neonic, but some kind of treatment. There's talk about a ban there. The other one, the 2 other big ones that we're watching is Blair Sherlock's got House Bill 4523. That would ban any agrochemical that has a PFAS in it. I will tell you, PFAS is the hot topic of it was last year and this year. You're going to see that. But I will tell you, talking to chemical companies, depending on what that definition is, and I would love to see the US EPA come out with a better definition of what PFAS is. But under that loose definition, you're probably looking at no new chemicals coming to market in the next 10 to 15 years if that is added in there. That is how important some of this PFAS stuff is in there. Now, could that change? Yes, I do. I think chemical companies are looking at something different for PFAS. Yes, but as of right now, that's what is the best technology to use. So we're definitely watching that one. The other one that we worked on last year, and Corey and my team have been working on this year, we're meeting with Representative Faber Diaz. She has House Bill 1596. And she originally said is we want to have every applicator in the state, commercial or farmer, large applicator, not just a lawn care, but a large applicator, meaning agriculture, to give a 72-hour notice before spraying around a school.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I've heard this one.
So we were willing to talk, but later into the session last year, and then what they have talking about this year, and there's some press on this one. You don't have to Google very hard to find it. What they've also asked, and this is where it gets a lot more difficult very quickly. It's not just schools. They've asked for every park, every bike trail, every home daycare that's in a half a mile of that location to give notification, 72-hour notification. But also is not just a notification, but name, applicator's number, the reason why you're spraying, the scientific name of that product, a lot of stuff, and the rates. So this
why is that?
When she first said a 72-hour notification, I didn't love it, but I understood her plight. I can understand schools, but what they're asking for now is I don't think they realize how much information they're asking for, and just in the timely manner what they're asking for. We've had conversation. She's a very nice legislator. We just, and some of this we just agree to disagree. Now we're going to keep working through this issue with her, but there is a major push by one of the environmental groups to get this. And again, you understand where the environmental groups are at. When they start doing press or trying to get press releases on a topic, that's usually where they're going to focus on. That is definitely one of those bills that we're probably going to have more discussions on going into the future. Again, I understand her plight, but we got to give some give and take. But what she's asking for right now is a whole lot of information. The other thing I've said to her is, if we would give that information to a school or a home daycare, what do they do with it afterwards? There's nothing they have to do with it. To be honest with you, So there's just a lot of questions. Again, we're going to work with her. We have another meeting set up with her next week to just have conversations. I know our friends at Farm Bureau and Illinois Corn Growers and Illinois Fertilizer Chemical Association are having conversations with her. I don't know if there can be agreement, but there will be at least discussion still going on about that. And I would definitely tell you guys, if we see something like that moving, we might be reaching out to you guys to call your legislators. Just give an understanding. I don't think a lot of legislators understand how much information they're asking for. And the other thing is, being from the farm, we know what the weather does. Weather changes quickly. 72 hours, it seems like a long time in the grand scheme of things. But if weather changes, we switch gears. We definitely switch gears on what that looks like. So again,
the practicality of it is...
And again, unless you're in a cab every day, you don't. Hey, guys, know we're just talking plan ahead. Plan ahead works great until you get that curveball. The old Mike Tyson quote: "Everybody's a champion until you get hit in the face, and then you got to readjust." Same thing with this. We plan out, but then when Mother Nature usually throws a curveball 90% of the time, then you gotta go on the fly. So just some common working through, but just we're gonna have some farmers talk to her. Again, she's very nice, willing to work, but just how that looks long term. Because they think you might spray one product. Well, heck, on a I might be spraying 5 different products in that tank at the end of the day. So again, just a lot of education has to happen on that piece of legislation.
That kind of leads to my next question of, looking at this list of proposed legislation out of Springfield, and you can correct me all if I'm wrong. These are state reps that are out of the Chicago suburbs. So making that point, but also why is such the target on pesticides? It's just been done over and over, or why are they going that direction? Which you may not know the answer to, but just more of an observation.
I wish I could have a good answer. I mean, most of them that are introducing some stuff are very much tied with environmental groups. Representative Diaz, I can't say that, but a lot of the other ones, if you look at the guys that have bans on products, absolutely, they're very much environmental friendly legislators. So you definitely seen that. But there's have to be an education on stuff, on a lot of the stuff we're going to have. Again, I got to take this quote from Director Costello. On a clear day, 66% of the Illinois can see the Sears Tower or Willis Tower on a clear day. So we got to work with a lot more urban legislators. As much as we don't want to say that, we got to. And to just explaining to the ground level what that looks like. What's the difference between a tractor, a combine, and a sprayer? A lot of legislators would not know that. And why we use some of the products that we use. Or somebody say, the conversation we usually have is, you want us to do more or less tillage. I think that's a good thing. But that means you're probably going to use more pesticides. If you want less pesticides, we're probably going to do more tillage. Some don't. That's hard to understand unless you're out there day to day. And they don't understand killing weeds. I mean, that's why you're going to lose money. And then again, tough economic times. And that's what I'm going to try and stress the most with legislators this year in Washington, D.C. and Springfield is that just, the farm gate economy is not great right now. So again, give us certainty. Let us try and work through this on prices, but don't just get rid of a tool unless there's scientific backing that has to. Now, if EPA says that we're going to get rid of it, like I know there's one of the conversations about paraquat. Is there more limits on paraquat? I know the Administrator Zeldin out of EPA has kind of talked about that. You know what? That's probably going to be based on science, not just a political bent on an issue. So, and I think that's where it should go.
You mentioned the session going till May. How should farmers keep up to date with this, or when is decisions going to be made? That's probably hard to say. But if farmers are looking at this, what do they need to know in terms of keeping up to date with this information?
Yep. So what is going to happen is it is an election year. Okay. The March 17th is the primary day here in Illinois. There is going to be very little that gets done between now and then. We'll just see what happens. We are in session next week. I invite you guys all. Illinois Soy is going to do a lobby day on the 18th. That's the budget address that the governor is going to give, but you'd like to come, you're more than welcome to come. But we're going to start talking to legislators then. I really think there's about a 2-week period after March 17th where is bill deadline to get something out of committee. I think that will be the gauntlet. We'll know pretty good after those 2 weeks where we're at. Usually when it goes through, if it goes through committee or it doesn't go to committee, we pretty much weed out probably 80% of the bills. And the last half of session is, okay, these are real. What do we got to go through? So there's going to be probably 2 or 3 week window right after the March primary that we're going to talk to legislators, but our membership and farmers out there and say, hey, these are important. This might come up in committee. Hey, will you call your legislator? And then we'll have a better handle after that what comes up. So I have tried to promote that we're going to try and do a weekly video, small, quick, 3-4 minutes of what is going on in Springfield that pertain to agriculture. Some of them might not, but just needs to be the issues of the day, what legislators are talking about. Because we can talk about ag, but there's always a lot of other issues that are going on that might affect of why this is moving and why this is not moving. But in the grand scheme of things, I definitely think that with Governor Pritzker up for re-election, he's going to focus on the budget. The budget is definitely tighter, a lot because of what has happened on the national level. And it also used to be, I would say, when COVID was going on, there was a lot of COVID money that flowed into the state. That is gone now. So not saying mass part of the problem, but a mass part of the problem. I think the harder decision now, and I think the governor is going to work on 2 or 3 more bigger issues, maybe with a national tent, because he might have his eye set on something bigger long term. I think those are the big issues that we're going to work on. Everything else is window dressing from there. The other issue I want to just give you guys a heads up on is the wetlands bill. What the definition of wetland, it pretty much boils down to what is the definition of navigable? That's what what is that in? The environmental groups have put that in the last couple of years. This will be year 3 on that. I think there will be major discussions on wetlands, and that directly affects how farmers farm. Because going in the future, how does that work on a tiling project? So I think that will be a longer term problem or longer term issue we're going to deal with. But that's definitely going to be in the forefront. The environmental groups have very much talked about working on that. Is this the year that gets something passed? I don't know. I think there's a lot more discussions that have, but some of those issues that have come up with that, they've just been very much 2 polar sides on that one. I don't know if there can be agreement on that one, but there will definitely be more discussions on what does wetlands look like.
Sure. So there lies in one of my last questions is that wetlands bill. We've seen this bill for 3 years in a row. Are bills more likely to get paid or get voted on or moved along, I should say, if they keep coming back year after year after year, or do they somehow reach a mark where it's dead on arrival?
No bad bill ever goes away in Springfield, somewhat, but it can keep coming back. I think there's a time where sometimes it just drops off because they know. There's usually a time and place for every bill to either it's going to pass the muster or it's not. I think this is one of those years on wetlands that there's going to be a hard push for it. Now, does it get passed? I don't know. We're going to see. There's a long list. A lot of the agriculture groups have been opposed to it. Realtors, manufacturers have been opposed, but even the unions have been opposed. I think a key sign on the wetlands bill is if you ever get the unions to come off that bill, then we're in a different place. But there's been some major road builders unions that have been opposed just because they know that could stop some of those projects. So we're going to keep watching, but I think this is a year that there will be a major push on the wetlands, and it could be do or die for that bill. It might, again, next year, if it doesn't pass, it still might come up. But I think this is that 1 year that they think we got to get over the finish line this year, if not. The other thing is a lot of this stuff, it's election year. Let's just call it what it is. I think some of this stuff, not everything, is people put bills in on election years just to say, well, we're doing something for back home. Does it all move? No. We're going to watch. There's a lot of stuff we got to watch. If all these bills come back next year, I'm always more worried about the odd number of years, because we just got through election, and if they're going to pass something bad, they got a year and a half to run for election. This, I think there's a lot more, what I would call a Fisher bill, just fishing it out there to see what sticks.
Yeah.
Or for a 30-second ad or a mail piece out there. So I think we're going to weed down through a lot. Again, that deadline to get out stuff committee, both in the Senate and House, again, we'll narrow a lot of stuff down after we get through those time periods.
So I think you could label this episode TBA, to be announced, to be determined, however you look at it. So with a lot still up in the air with, questions on Dicamba, the farm bill, what that'll look like. I know you'll be talking and all this Springfield legislation. How can people continue to be updated on what's going on? Because I know your team's doing a lot of work to keep people updated.
I always tell everybody, go to ilsoy.org. We're going to have it. You can go to the government part. There's a tab up top. You can go to that for membership. But always follow us on all the social media platforms. We usually come out with something on Tuesday for all our members, and just the social media, kind of what the government affairs team is doing. Again, we're going to try and put out weekly videos of just the issues that we're working on. But again, if we see something coming out, we will definitely do email blasts, and then to our soy advocates to call their legislators about something that really might be bad. Again, I'd love to say there's a lot of good pieces of ag legislation out there. There are, but a lot of them is a lot of stuff that we're trying to oppose than we are trying to support.
And then just to differentiate too for our audience, if you're not familiar, so there's Illinois Soybean Board, which is the checkoff side, which it's illegal to do any lobbying or anything on the checkoff side. So you guys are just simply putting out information on the checkoff side, but on the grower side, so Illinois Soybean Growers is the membership organization. That's where you're doing your lobbying and all that. So just to be distinguished between the two platforms of where you can get information on the website, but then also if you want to be more involved, I would say that's where the growers come into play.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the clarification, because we do get a lot of questions on that. How does that work from there? One other thing I was going to touch base with you on and just give a quick update to your listeners is last year we passed a really good piece of legislation, SB 783. Will let growers go to continuous education and not have to take their pesticide tests long term. Just a little update. We are working with the Department of Ag on setting rules with that. We will probably not see that set forth until probably late summer, fall of 27. So we always get questioned. I got a question again at a meeting last week. Hey, when can I do my continuous education for a pesticide test? That is still an ongoing process. Just know I'm trying to lay out a timetable that's realistic from there. So again, what we worked on with the Department of Ag is that every 3 years, if you're an applicator, you must take a test currently to be an applicator in the state of Illinois. What we're looking to do in the future is that if you still want to take that test every 3 years, you do not have to take any continuous education classes. You just take your test every 3 years and you just keep on renewing. But once you pass that test the first time and you take approved Department of Ag classes, then you will not have to take any testing going into the future. That will probably be 4 or 5 hours a year. But if you keep that up, then you never got to take that. Now, if you miss a year, I'm telling you, you're going to have to take the testing again. But we really think that applicators, professional applicators and farmers long-term will take a lot more classes. But this will help us also educate our members better of what's going on, especially like this prime example, Dicamba comes out. Okay, what's the new rules? We can put those in those classes. Maybe that's an hour of the class of guys, here's what the new Dicamba label looks like at the end of the day. So I think it's a good thing, but we are starting to get questions on that. But it's
Sure.
not. It's
So for right
we're
now, they still
working.
have to take the test.
Yes.
Okay.
I would tell you if you're in, and we're going into the session. So if your license is up right now, you're still going to take tests. And I would tell you if your license is up the beginning of 27, you're probably still going to take the test. We're hoping long term, like if you go into 28, that some of that is going to go from there. The other question that got asked last week, I just think it's not official, but I think this is going to happen. I think a lot of the classes will be in person. I would say 80, 90% of them. Do I think there will be an option to take classes online? Absolutely. But I will tell you, if you took your pesticide test during COVID at home, there's a thing it's called proctored, where you had to show all around your room that there's no notes, there's no computer, there's nothing like that. And that you're present. I do think there will be online classes, but they will probably be proctored, meaning you can't just hit play and walk out the room. And I think that's a good thing. But I think we get the question, is there going to be online classes? Yeah, I think there will be, but just know firsthand that those will be proctored classes going into the future. And that's stuff that we're still working out. But what other states have done, I know will have to be met here in Illinois. And I can tell you that's going to be one of those things that will have to be met here in Illinois also.
So you say applicators and farmers, does that apply to drone operators or does that fit in any way?
Yeah. So the other thing leads into another great question. Your first test is your general standards that everybody has to take. Then there's categories. So a lot of retailers got to take category testing, not farmers. But if you do drones, there is a category test for that. Okay. That's for most farmers. If they're going to take a category test, it is on that drone stuff. Okay. Right now, probably for the least 3 or 4 years after we get it built with the Department of Ag, it will only be for general standards applications. Okay. You will still have to take a test for the category. As I always said, and people heard me say it 1,000 times, we got to walk before we run. Mm-hmm. So let's make sure we do the general standards right, and then we can go to category testing. Long term, that is the goal, is to do category testing. But for at least probably the next first 3 or 4 years to get it off the ground, it will just be general standards. And probably 90% of the farmers fit under just general standards. Retailers, commercial applicators, a lot of them have to take category testing, another test. We'll get there, but that's not going to be at the very beginning.
Hey, Jay, wrapping up here, anything else? This has all been very good information. That was my goal as we're going into the growing season, what to be aware of. And I know spring is just on the cusp this week with the weather. People are probably finally getting that itch. I know I am, to get outside and be outside. But anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
The biggest thing I've kind of mentioned it before, guys, we always talk about what's going on in DC. That's the big, everybody sees it, everybody get the move. But there's a lot of stuff that's going on the state level and the local level that have just as much bearings on your operation than does the national. But sometimes we don't focus on that, or we don't, that's Springfield, that's the county board. But just know you need to be aware of what's going on at the local level, because again, that might have more direct effect on your farming operation than the national level does.
KJ, how can they contact you? Can you give an email?
Yeah, you can reach me anytime, kj@ilsoy.org, or you can call the office. But love to hear if you got questions or anything that's going on, reach out to me. Love to hear from you.
That's probably the easiest email address to memorize right there.
When I started, that was with my older email. I want it short and sweet. I can just rattle off to somebody. And I think, as I tell a lot of people, somebody say, you want to be called KJ or Kevin? I said, I think the only people that call me Kevin is my mother and when my wife is really upset with me. So it's usually KJ for anything. But love to see everybody. I hope everybody has a safe spring. We're not quite there yet, but I hope everybody has a safe spring and a profitable season.
KJ, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Field Advisor Podcast. Unbiased, independent agronomy information to keep your farm moving forward. I'm Kelsey Litchfield, your voice from the field. This podcast is funded by the Illinois Soybean Association Checkoff Program. Stay connected with Field Advisor on social media. Follow, like, and share to keep the conversation going. And don't forget to subscribe to the Field Advisor Podcast on your favorite podcast platform.